Well, that would be me, Wild Bill Samsel, your host of the Samsel Report. Join me for Wild Bill's Headline Roundup every Saturday night, right here on Revolution Radio.
Every Tuesday evening on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, we present our goddess spiritual warrior, Kathy Bilski.
I command. I call to the architect of the universe's divine creators and ask for permission to quantum leap the world in all life forms on all planes and dimensions, seen and unseen, connected with planet Earth, to let us go beyond our known potential into the greatest unknown golden age the universes and worlds and all planets have ever experienced.
Kathy teaches the spiritual truth so that you may create a better life and be able to make positive changes for yourself and for the planet. She helps us remember that we are not powerless, but very creative spiritual beings having an Earth experience. Time to quantum leap into the age of divine enlightenment and let Kathy provide you with the tools of knowledge you need to awaken spiritually. That's the Quantum Leap Show. Let Light Unite every Tuesday at 10 p.m. Eastern on Revolution Radio, Studio B.
Hi, this is the voice known as Tammy Pepperman. Have you ever thought about how this seems like a farm? The food comes with daily recommended allowance, just like any other farm animal. If you get out of line, you get prodded, slapped, or killed if you're too much liability. And if you are not earning your keep, you can find yourself in prison for non-payment of taxes or child support. If you're tired of being farm product, join us every Thursday night from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Studio B and Saturday, 6 to 8 p.m. on Studio B, right here on Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com.
Good afternoon. This is Debbie West, host of Lost Knowledge radio show on Revolution Radio. And I have my co-host today with me, as always, Michael Hathaway. Michael, are you there?
I am here, Deb.
So today we're going to be talking to Meg Blackburn. And she has written several books. She's written a lot of books, including Touching the Light, Conversations with the Children of Now, and the Children of Now Evolution, which is her latest book. Her books, especially the last two on the Children of Now, are basically creating an international wave of excitement. That's what I'm going to call it, because they explain the cultural difference of this worldwide evolution in species that planet Earth is experiencing. And what we have been talking about, Michael, for so long is the evolution of this new, the fifth root race on the fifth dimensional Earth. She has actually done interviews with many of the children, and she's going to give us some information about those interviews and give us a sort of a glimpse into how these children operate, how they come in here with the knowledge that they have, why their energy is different than the energy of the former occupants of the planet, some of them being ourselves who are also transitioning, and many other things. So I'm going to add her to the call. She had to feed her puppy, I think, or something when I talked to her. So let's bring Meg Blackburn on.
Hello.
Hi, Meg. This is Debbie West from Lost Knowledge, and we have just done a quick introduction of you and all of the books that you have written, including the latest book, The Children of Now Evolution. So we all our listeners are really excited to have you on the show today, and I'd like to introduce you to my co-host, Michael Hathaway, who's on the line.
Hi, Michael.
Hi there.
So, Meg, I want to start out. One other thing I didn't get to mention in the introduction for people that might not know, Meg Blackburn is also the creator of the Touching the Light healing modality, and she has in the past and maybe doing it now, she'll let us know, some journeys to sacred sites. So her work has not just been with children, but we're going to talk about those two of her latest books now. And if we have time at the end, we'll talk a little bit more about some of the other work that she's been doing. She is a recipient of the Culture of Peace Award and also has served as a consultant on Good Morning America in 2020. So, Meg, can you tell us a little bit? The thing that pops out for me and the thing that we would like to know about right away is the kids that you talk about in the book. It seems like they have been labeled incorrectly with society being trying to figure out who they are and energetically what they're like. And we have these new labels of ADD, autism, Asperger's, and so on. Can you just talk about that? Because that is of really high importance and people are really wanting to know what is going on there.
Thank you, Debbie. That's one of the questions that I really love to answer. Here's the deal. Kids today aren't like we were when we were kids. They are sentient. And what I mean by that is they don't just use their five senses. They feel everything with their entire body and energy field. And because of that, they also feel what other people are feeling. They feel the true motivations behind what people say or do. They feel, for instance, the emotions of other people in the room. And they're also highly sensitive to visual and oral overload. In other words, too much in your ears, too much in your eyes. Like for somebody like me, I have the same issue. You know, you walk into somewhere like Walmart or one of the big box stores, and there's so much stuff you can't see anything. Well, these kids get overloaded really easily because they're so sensitive. And as they get more and more input, and I mean energetically, not just with their five senses, but intuitively as well, the only way that they can get comfortable is to move around and shake some of that off. It's not a conscious thing. It's just the nature of who they are. So you might have a child in class who's constantly moving around and constantly getting in trouble for it, who later actually gets medicated so he'll sit still. Well, the truth is, if you ask that child what their day was like, they would describe to you all of the feelings in the room, who was having what issues, what they learned in all of their subjects, and they would do it concisely and succinctly in a way that would just be mind-blowing if anybody bothered to ask them. But what's happening is they're getting into trouble, and they're being labeled as ADD and ADHD, and frankly, that's an old paradigm diagnosis, which is quite a blanket diagnosis for what is perceived to be, a negative behavior, when in fact, all these kids are trying to do is stay comfortable. They're in furniture that's uncomfortable and hard, and their environments are busy and overloaded with color and words and people, and they don't know what to do with all that because they can't discern what's theirs and what's somebody else's. They need to learn that, but nobody's telling them that. So they take everything on.
Right. So they take everything on energetically. And why is that different than maybe, 20, 30, 40 years ago?
Things were a lot simpler then, and we were not as sensitive then as these kids are. These kids are highly, highly sensitized. And I mean that on every level, physically, mentally, emotionally, energetically. They're highly aware, far more than we ever were. If you compare something in the 1950s or 60s to now, our world is so much more complex. There's so much more coming at us in real time. And that's contributing to the issue of the static in the kids' environments and ours, frankly.
Right. Exactly. Everybody. I know. We're all feeling it, right? So are they, one of the things that you talk about in the book is that they have communicated to you that they're multidimensional and that they operate in different, dimensions. Dimensionality is important.
They actually do. Not all of them, but a good many of them do. They're able to communicate telepathically, which is how I got involved to such a large extent with so many kids in the first place. There are those who are not physically able in a lot of ways and have found other ways to communicate. And the kids are really, really intuitive. So it's very easy for them to reach out and get into someone's attention that is able to pick up on this thing, someone like me or other people, I'm not the only one, that are able to recognize they will kind of call out for, hey, I need some help. I've got this stuff I need to say, or this needs to happen and I can't speak for myself. I mean, there was a lot of that in the beginning, and then that later kind of evolved into a lot of grassroots movements, new schools popping up, conferences, different kinds of things, meet and greets for parents and kids that are similarly natured, and it's been quite a phenomenon. It's not new, but it's getting more and more frequent and intense in the aspects of evolution.
I know. It's so exciting because I think for a while people felt very frustrated with this, what is happening with what are these waves of, the autism diagnosis, and what does it mean, and what, are we all, is it vaccines? Is it our environment? What is it? And now all of a sudden we're turning around and saying these are highly sentient beings who are here to help bring light and love to the planet. And that's what you say in your book. The kids actually tell you that, right?
Oh, absolutely. Those are actual quotes from many of the kids in the first book, and it's true. And there's so many factors environmentally, pharmautically, even energetically, the vaccines, genetically modified foods. There's so many things contributing, to what's happening with the kids, that it's a much bigger picture than I innocently thought when I put the first book out.
Right.
When I started listening to people and what they were doing for their kids and what was working and what wasn't, and I started doing research to find answers for them, I was absolutely stupefied at the number of contributing factors we have going on. For instance,
Go ahead.
Vaccines have, first of all, I feel like vaccines are an awesome thing, and they've really served to eradicate some pretty darn nasty illnesses in our world. However, they use something in vaccines called a carrier that actually helps distribute the good stuff, shall we say, of the vaccines through the body. The carriers have often been things like mercury, thallium, and there are a couple other ones that I named in the new book. And what those are is conductive materials. I mean, literally, for instance, mercury has been studied as fuel for interstellar travel by scientists. And it expands when the temperature rises. That's how it works in our thermometers. So here we have a highly refined child who has an extremely sensitive, high-frequency energy field, which is the way things are happening in our world because of the way we're evolving. And you put something like that in their body, and what it does is consciousness is not physical. It's not the brain or the logical sense. It's what animates our bodies. It's why we lose 1/28th of a gram when we die. Their consciousness is an actual living thing, and it's like online 24/7. Our consciousness is not limited to space or time or distance or anything. And you put a conductive material into a body that's already very sensitive, and it expands the energy field. That includes consciousnness, and it literally will push consciousness outward in a regular or irregular patterning that takes part of the consciousness of the child out of our reality and into other realities. And that's why we have such a wide spectrum of autism, because it depends on the original harmonics of the child. We're completely created of energy. Energy is all harmonically oriented and organized. And so you get different results with different children because everybody, that's why we look different, we act different, we feel different, because each of us is harmonically different, and each of us is a reflection of those harmonics in our existing bodies. But there are a lot of other realities outside of this one, a lot of different levels and layers of energy and many other things that I talked about in a couple other my books. And so what I found with the autistic kids as I worked with them was they have this real irregular movement of their conscious field, their intangible energy, because of these conductive materials. So the things that we're trying to do to help them are actually contributing to. I'm not saying that it's necessarily the only cause, but it's a huge contributing factor to what's happening to the kids.
Yeah.
Another thing, and related to that, another piece of that is, and I have witnessed this personally many times, is that children will start their vaccines, and then at about age 3, anywhere between 3 to 18 months, it depends on the child, they may start having seizures or look like they're spacing out or worse. And I'm watching one of my best friends go through that with her little guy right now. They diagnosed him with seizure disorder. He was fine. He was absolutely fine till he got his 18-month-old vaccines. And it's the 18-month mark that seems to be notated in research more than not. And he started having seizures, and they couldn't give him the vaccines. And supposedly there's nothing in them to cause that. But the consciousness and the energy fields of these kids are just so fine that they're subject to interruptions more so than any other generation, and differently than we did previously.
What a travesty that we can't figure all this out sooner, right? What? And I'm not going to stay on this negative for very long, but one of the things that made me very uncomfortable, because I've written about healthcare quite a bit, is that the pharmaceuticals and probably schools are being incentivized to medicate the kids. Can you talk about that? I'm
expecting them to show up at my door or in my mailbox. and I don't care. Here's the deal. All of the stories that I told, in particularly the new book that's coming out November 1st, The Children of Now Evolution, came directly from people who worked in doctors' offices and schools. The comments were unsolicited, and I did not exaggerate one word of when I told these stories. These came from people who actually witnessed some of these things happening. One pharmaceutical company paid over $100,000 for a kid's birthday party that of one of the doctors. So a lot of stories. I taught a lot.
Say that again. Paid what?
Over $100,000 for a child's birthday party, a doctor's son's birthday party.
Who paid for it?
A pharmaceutical company.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean they're not legally allowed to, supposedly, to directly reimburse or pay for referrals for the drugs, and so the way that they get around it are different things like that. And I heard many of these stories. I didn't go looking for them. Yeah. The last thing I want to do is tangle with a pharmaceutical company. They're way bigger than I am.
Well, and then you I talk to teachers, and you hear from teachers that, I said to a vice principal the other day, I said, how many kids are medicated in schools now? Because my kids are older. They're already, I have a daughter in medical school, believe it or not, at UT here in Houston. But the incidence right now of prescribing medication to children, I said, how high is it? And she said, probably you don't even want to know. She says it's over half, and we're being gauged by how many we can medicate. Right. They feel like it's so advantageous to put these kids on medicine that they encourage it. They send kids home and tell the parents, if you don't put them on medication, they can't come to school.
Not only that, but I have heard stories where social services showed up at people's doors and said, if you don't medicate your child, we're taking them away from you.
So how do we help these parents? Because I wouldn't do it. I can't even imagine giving my kids medicine.
No.
And I don't know, the vaccines is really scary. We gave kids vaccines when I was raising my kids, but what do we tell parents? Like, you have so much wisdom and research on this. Like, what can you give them any advice? Or
my advice is twofold. First of all, it's your child. Do not let other people, under the guise of being an expert, tell you what to do to your child. If your child needs help, you know your child better than anyone. Is that what's really going on, or is it something else? Second of all, our school system is based on a curriculum that's well over 100 years old. It's time for us to revisit that and to restructure and reorganize so that our children get what they need in an environment that's comfortable and in ways that their minds work, because their minds are compartmentalizing. They don't think in rational, logical, straight line logic like we learned how to do. They file little pieces of information all over in their brain, and then when they need it, they extract it. And so, in the meantime, they're, frankly, from my perception and what I've seen and what I've learned is every time they go to school, and this isn't every school, but this is the norm, okay? It's torture for these kids. And they're bored, and it's like one of them said to me, we already talked about that. Why are we having to go over it and over it and over it? We've been there, done that. And I'm 3 light years ahead of them.
Yeah.
Why
well, when
should I
you come
sit
in
still and
with the stronger resonance, and you're in, you living in a holographic world, that third dimensional reality is very hard to shrink yourself into. So I can't even imagine what these kids must feel like.
Right,
I mean,
so they're being forced into it, and then they're drugged, so their senses are dulled, and they don't feel like themselves, and they're not able to access a lot of their sentient nature, and so basically all they're doing is dulling the children to sit still, and that's not okay. I mean, I don't even know what the long-term effects of that will be, later on. What I do know is we're seeing kids acting out, whether it's self-abuse, alcohol, drugs, hurting themselves because they've gotten so desensitized. And some of them even have been committing suicide because they just can't take it anymore.
Right. So that's the really horrific
okay.
side of what could happen. But let's talk, Meg. Let's talk about what you've been able to. You've been able to see some of the brighter side of this, because some of the people that you have been able to come in contact with through telepathic communication have been children and mothers who have figured out how to access this. The love that these children have to share, even if they can't communicate to the parent, right?
They're amazing. These kids are amazing. And the first thing that I learned from them, the most powerful thing, I think, in all of these years was don't ever look away. Even if you think there's no one home, who's in there is amazing. And that's across the board, kids, adults, everybody. We're taught the different is not okay and we should avoid it. The fact is we should dive into it and learn about it and learn from it. And that's something that was personally really valuable for me.
So can you describe this little boy, Weston, who reached out to you telepathically? Because I feel like he's a good example.
My favorite little monkey, yeah. Weston, originally there were four children who almost simultaneously started telepathically talking to me. And frankly, I thought I was losing my mind. I mean, I'm intuitive, I'm gifted, I can see a lot of stuff, but this was different. And it was so powerful and so like they were in the room except they were in my head kind of thing. I really wasn't so sure. And I said, okay, guys, if you're real, I need to meet you in person. I need you to show up because I don't print anything unless I can validate it.
So you were where? You were like in California, and
I was in, at that point, I was living in Tennessee, but I had been traveling when they started communicating.
And they were all over the different parts of the country.
Uh-huh. They were in, let's see, one was in Canada, one was in, where was he? I forget.
But you were getting you were hearing their voice, or they were showing you images, or they were sending this telepathic communication to you.
They were talking to me, and it's like you and I are talking now, only we didn't have a mic. We had, they were just in my head, and it was crazy.
Well, this might sound even crazier, but we're the only planet left that that communicates the way we do verbally. Everybody else is telepathic, so that shows how.
Yeah, I believe that.
Yeah. Okay. So
it's what I get. That's what I hear too.
Right.
So
that's how far behind we are here. And Earth is kind of a little bit of a remote outpost. That's what Michael calls it. We're kind of on a remote little outpost here, trying to figure out how to live in a duality system where we can distinguish, love from hate. And so, but these kids are the fifth root race. They're bringing in this new energy. They live with the resonance that, we've been waiting for. So that's cool. But so what's really cool is that they were able to get through on your frequency. They were sending you communication, you were receiving it, and you were saying, what is going on, right?
Right. So I said, hey guys, start showing up. So about 2 weeks later, I got a phone call, and it was this wonderful woman, and she was laughing when I answered the phone, and she says, well, The truth is, I'm not calling you for me. I'm calling you for my son, Weston. He said he needed you. And I said, oh, my God, he's been talking to me, hasn't he? And she started cracking up. And she said, yeah, that's what he said. She worked with him with a keyboard and an eraser board because he couldn't physically speak.
So describe Weston. How old was he, and was he able to walk?
He was 11 at the time.
He's 11 years old. Can he walk around? Can he play ball like other kids? I mean, what's his life like?
He had a very large cyst in his brain. That he was normal as far as I know when he was born, and when he was a little guy, kindergarten, first grade kind of age, he had a large cyst grow in his brain that compromised his voice functioning and a little bit of other stuff. He can walk around and stuff, but
would he have been labeled autistic or something like that, or?
No, Weston's one of a kind. Trust me on this.
Uh-huh.
But
kids at school might have found him odd. They didn't understand him. They don't know what's happening with him. He doesn't speak. He seems...
Well, his mom couldn't hear him, and I said, well, how did he tell you to reach me? She said he pulled up your website and pointed to you. I said, okay. So anyway, I started working with Weston, and he is an unbelievable telepath. He would all of a sudden take over my reality. And, I mean, I'd be sitting here having my own thoughts, and all of a sudden I'm seeing whole other worlds and other people. And he had a really fun sense of humor. I was in a recording booth. I decided to do a CD for the kids because they needed to not be afraid of what was happening for them. And it was something they could listen to at night before they go to sleep. It's a kind of a fun thing. And I was in the recording booth, and I was using shiny colored boxes to kind of teach the kids about all their positive things. First, I told them how to get rid of their negative thoughts, and then how to find all of their positive nature. And I got to one example, imagination, and I said, you can never fill this box because your imagination is unlimited. And right about that time, I hear croaking. And I look down, and in this box, now I'm sitting in a recording booth in New York City, okay? I mean, going through this CD, just really on a roll, and all of a sudden my head fills with croaking frogs coming out of this box. It was hilarious.
So this boy was transmitting a visual to you?
It's more than a visual, it's a reality. It's like all of a sudden my reality is gone, and whatever he wanted me to experience would be there. And that was just one of the fun little things he did.
So do you think it's possible for people here, parents and other people, to learn how to use this telepathic communication skill?
Actually, many people have and are. And the reason is that once we know something's possible, we have an ability to have that awareness. Because what happened is after I put The Children of Now out, after it was released, and I told the stories of the kids, people started writing me and saying, I'm hearing them. And I had a few that were kind of maybe not, but overall, I could tell by the tone and the words, they were writing me exactly what the kids were saying. And I could identify the child based on the languaging and the sentiments.
Have they ever talked to you about the universal mind or the Akashic field?
Oh, yeah, that's where they operate. And they'll tell you that consciousness isn't limited. I did a follow-up to that first book called Conversations with the Children of Now, and you'll find a lot of that in there. When they realize they're able to communicate that way, they also know that there's no time or space to limit them, and they can go anywhere, past, present, or future. And if you're open enough and well enough into your intuitive abilities, they'll actually take you with them and show you things, and it's just crazy. They can access all kinds of realities. I had it happened. I was in a group of with a group of Native American elders up in Bemidji, Minnesota.
So I was born in Bemidji, I have to tell you that.
Were you? Okay.
And I was just there last week.
I was born in Roswell. Do you think there's something about that?
Roswell, New Mexico.
Yeah. Anyway.
Lord. Yeah. Let's not go there right now. Yeah.
Yeah. So up in Bemidji, I happened to run into at the hostess at the host home where we were staying, there was this bowl hanging on the wall, and the woman said, "I got this from the grandfather of a boy who doesn't speak." And I held the bowl and I looked at it and I was like, "Oh my gosh!" And I started hearing this boy, and he was describing that it was a whole different DNA layout that he had patterned into this bowl. And anyway, long story short, I said, "Listen, I don't live around here, and I'm not going to be able to be available for you like I have been for some of these other kids, because by then I was crazy busy. So show up for somebody here so they can help you." And darned if he didn't do that. He showed up to the daughter of the host couple very shortly after that, and they were able to help him. So, I mean, he showed up in physical form with his granddad, went to where the daughter worked.
Yeah,
and they were
so
able to connect.
these kids are connected energetically and telepathically through the universal consciousness field, where they can operate in a multidimensional fashion. One of the things that I think you talk about in the book is that they come in knowing what their earth assignment is. So they understand that they are spiritual beings and that they have an assignment here on this planet when they arrive.
Yeah, it's not so much an assignment as it is an intention. What they'll tell us is that they've come because we've forgotten how to love and what unconditional love truly is. They'll tell you that we're not being fair to each other, that everyone should have what they need and they don't. They'll tell you how badly we've abused the planet and how we can start to change that. They're really here to make a difference. And they're powerful. I mean, some of them, they walk into a room and everybody listens. And they might be 4 or 5 years old, doesn't matter. They're born strong leader type people, or some of them are real technology oriented. They're all about new technologies that can help the planet and help people that way. So
I've heard of young kids who've come in here and said, "I'm here to build spacecraft," and they can literally describe the propulsion system and how this craft is supposed to be designed.
That's true. I had a little guy. He was 7 years old, I think, and he wore red feet pajamas to come and see me. It was hilarious. And in his little teeny hands was one of those coffee table sized books that was like 2 inches thick and almost as big as him. All about the history of airplanes. And this kid, I was trying to find some common ground with him quickly. You know, that always helps when you work with kids. And I told him that my dad had flown airplanes in the Air Force, and told him when. And he says, "Oh, that would be this plane." And he started explaining to me the entire way the plane was put together, how it operated, how the flaps worked, what kind of propulsion it used, what kind of fuel it used. I was just in awe of this little guy. and then when I put him on the table to work with him, I can't remember why he was there. It was some time ago. But when I put him on the table, he started talking multidimensionality with me like he was a little adult person who was doing it. And his vocabulary was phenomenal.
And how do you remember how old he was?
He was 7.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he, just like that, just like you described, he could talk about anything like that. See, here's the deal. The Akashic Records, the Cosmic Mind, it's all the same thing. Everything is energy. Energy is in constant motion, and it's intelligent, and it remembers everything. So while energy is moving and expressing itself in various forms, it's also remembering everything it's ever been and ever done since the moment of creation. And probably before, but I can't track that far back. So when these kids do this, what they are able to do is literally put their consciousness out into a field of energy and collect data and bring it back through their mouths or their work or whatever. And that's the way we always used to be, and then we evolved out of it. Our logical brain took over. You know, we started migrating. We started learning how to communicate. We started trading with people, and that developed subtleties. Am I getting a good deal? Aren't I getting a good deal? What do I have to watch for? Oh, this guy didn't give me a fair deal last time. and then language is developed, and more logical sense and nature of the human body and experience, until we forgot our more natural abilities. They're still there. We all have it. We've just used our brain to the point where it creates a field of energy that stops us from going through that open door. And when we quiet the mind and we quiet the need to know and let ourselves be shown, the experience is completely and immensely different. The kids know this inherently.
So one of the things around 2012, I wrote about the 8th chakra, and I know that that's kind of old news now. What's going on with the chakra systems? Are there more chakras opening up? Like I've heard up to 13.
Yeah, there's a lot of people putting that out. I'm not here to yay or nay anybody else's work, but what I will say is that I can literally see this stuff, and I don't see any new chakras. What I do see, and there are about 12 total, because we have them not only in the places that are on all the posters, but we have them between our knees, we have them between our ankles, we have them on the bottoms of our feet and our feet and in our hands. What is happening with them, however, and it could be that some people are misreading it, is that certain of our chakra system are doing different things. Like the crown chakra sometimes on people is really elongated, so much so that you can't tell where it's connecting. Different chakras are doing different things, and that is not actually uncommon. As everything evolves and energy is in constant and fluid motion, we are constantly adjusting to whatever is now. And our DNA also remembers, and by epigenetic expression, in other words, not changing our DNA, but how we express ourselves, though we are evolving into different kinds of beings because of the nature of how all of these things are coming together. It's quite fascinating if you step back and get out of the fear thing and really look at it from a curious nature. What's happening is phenomenal. And there are other parts of our etheric anatomy. I talked about how this works in my book, Touching the Light, and I actually teach a year-long certification course in it. But there are things that happen, like right now we're in a third evolution. Since I started this work nearly 20 years ago, we're in a third evolution of our causal bodies, which are the bridge between our human nature and our divine nature. They're just below the soul level, and there are two of them. And over certain periods of times, they've changed color or colors, and that's happening now. Everybody's hasn't changed yet. It's not exactly that the DNA is changing or anything else. A lot of times it's energy on non-local realities. And so that level, that causal level, being the bridge between here and there, so to speak, between our divine and our human natures, that level is kind of like an octave point. It's a balance level in our whole system. It's changing in response to the way the energies are shifting and changing since we had that 2012 alignment that you mentioned. That alignment caused a momentary hesitation, partial back turn, and then restarting of the Earth's precessional movements. And in that split second, that motion that happened actually kind of reset our harmonics in ways that we can't even fathom yet.
So the people on the planet got reset at the same time, and then the souls that incarnated arrived into new biological forms.
That's simplified, but yeah.
But I like to try to simplify things. I'm sorry.
Sorry, I love getting into how it works. But these kids were coming long before 2012. They started coming in the 1980s. The indigos were first in the 1980s, and then kind of progressed. And what's really fun is when you watch their energy fields. Like I said, I can see all this. I'm really weird, and that's okay. When with the crystalline kids at first, their energy fields were like searchlights all in jewel tones, forest green, indigo blue, gold, burgundy, those kind of colors. And they were in constant motion. And I realized that was a lot to do with why they couldn't sit still. Well, then over the years, I've literally watched that same energy field in a lot of kids refined to lighter and lighter and lighter, which is why there's so many different names for the same kids. Rainbow kids, dolphin kids, crystalline kids. I prefer to stay with crystalline just because it covers more territory. And now we've got kids that are evolving to the point, or coming in with complete white, clear energy fields. White energy contains all frequencies, all sounds, all types of energy, everything. It's like everything in one. So we've got kids being born with oneness energy the last couple of years, and I can't wait to see what they're going to be like. I don't know enough of them yet to give you a full story, but
I can't wait for that one.
Yeah, I knew this would happen.
Yeah, and one of the things that we've talked about is the fifth root race and the Edgar Cayce material, because that's I'm going to give Michael a chance to ask some questions in a minute, but that's we both come from a background of the Edgar Cayce teachings, and the children of the Law of One, had a strong connection to their spiritual selves, and had a struggle between, should we have a spiritual existence or should we go after the the scientific realm. And you probably know that history, but it feels like, for those of us who are going through the experience, it feels like a simultaneous experience of that sort of fight between the light and the dark, or the science and the spiritual sides, happening, in a different play, like in a different format.
I agree with you. And one thing that I want to say is, it's not about, in my perception, it's not about light and dark, or good or bad, or light and evil, or anything like that, because it takes everything to make one. And the question is, where is the balance? And what we're seeing right now is that we haven't come to balance with our own evolution. Our technology is basically outgrowing our psychology. We don't even know how to keep up with what we're doing yet. And so we're in a period of an adjustment. And to me, it's all positive, because if you stand back and look at the whole picture, what you see is, wow, some of these kids are so evolved, and wow, some of these kids are really having trouble. How can we help them in this evolution? And yes, it's all happening simultaneously, and it's brilliant when you really look at the whole picture. To be able to live in and observe and be a part of such a fast-forward evolution of human nature. I mean, my gosh, it's just phenomenal.
They're standing in line to get here.
Yes, they are.
Let me ask you a couple more things. What is their concept of God? Is it this expanded view of the Creator source? And where do they get that from? Because we're not taught that. How do these kids, what is their understanding, and where do they get it from?
It's not an understanding, it's a remembering. They will actually sit and talk with you about where they came from. Some of them were known to say they remember sitting with God and talking about their new life. They'll tell you that they picked their parents and why. Some of them will come to their expecting parents telepathically and give their name, or even say why they're coming. It's just crazy how these different things show themselves. And so I got a little off the question. I forgot where I was going, but it's just unbelievable how easily these kids do this stuff until we get in the way and try to teach them different, By the time they're 7, a lot of them have forgotten these things. But I remember your question. And so about God and creation and that kind of thing, they say that there's only oneness, and that God is that, and we are all aspects of that. The kids will tell you this.
They will tell you that.
Yeah.
So
they will tell us that
at what age are they saying that?
Little bitty ages. I've heard from parents all over the world that their little kids are, 2, 3, 4, 5 years old, are telling them this stuff. And
That, you know what? That makes my heart sing. I'm so excited.
Me too. Me too, because they're able to remember where they came from, and they can also, many of them, remember their past lives. I'm actually helping.
Well, can you go on Good Morning America in 2020 and tell all the parents all over the world that these kids are marvelous, and we are so blessed.
I'm doing my darndest.
Oh,
I'm working with A&E Lifetime Network right now, helping them find kids for some segments they're doing, and I actually was supposed to be on Good Morning America, but they had the Amish school shooting that week, and they bumped the kids, meaning me, because of that. They needed to explore that. That was current and edgy, and they thought it could be much more dramatic than what I had to say. I guess.
Yeah, let's go.
It was a sad thing. It was a very, very bad thing.
Sensationalized. No, I think that I mean, the fact that they're that little and that they can come in and resonate so strongly with the oneness is amazing to me. Michael, what do you think of that? Are you still here?
I am still here. I am enjoying this immensely, and you are not a normal lady, Meg.
I know, but that's okay.
But in my world, you're normal. So, I mean, and that's what I really appreciate is the way that you see and honestly know. When did you first discover that you weren't like everybody else?
Well, that's a really good question. It was a process, but I've been intuitive my whole life, and I just didn't understand that everybody else wasn't until I got a little older and people made fun of me, and I'd go to the grocery store and want to make something, and I would start hearing all the ingredients and how to do it, and I'd go home and do it, and everybody would rave and want the recipe, and I'd say, well, this is where I got it. And, of course, they thought I was crazy. And so I stopped talking to people like many did, and then I went through a period of time that I call my dark night of the soul, where everything that I thought was my life fell apart. And I got real humble real fast. And what I realized was that life wasn't working. It wasn't everybody else's fault. There was too much going on. What's going on? And when I looked at it, I realized that I was living life based on what I thought everyone wanted me to be, and I didn't even know who I was or what I wanted. So I set out to find that out, and the first thing that I did was start telling myself the truth ruthlessly, no matter what. And what I realized was how many times a day we actually BS ourselves. They didn't mean that. Yes, they did. Silly things, but they add up. And funny thing, when I started when I let my defenses down and I started to relax into myself instead of trying to be something, that's when my intuition really flew open, and I call it my series of cosmic 2x4s. And the more that I opened to it, the more I was able to do or be, in some cases, more. It was very quick because I didn't resist it. And I didn't have a need to understand it. There was no who, what, why, how, where, or when. Instead, if I got something and I didn't understand it, I just said two words, show me. And what I realized was that when I got out of the way, intuition, that's such a small word for such a great nature. But when we get out of the way and we relax into ourselves and we're truthful, there's nothing being protected. We are completely available to our higher natures, our higher self. Our consciousness, which is online 24/7, can actually deliver what it finds. And so with opening consciousness also opens intelligence. It's quite interesting to look at from a little bit of distance to realize how far our intelligence can go when only we get out of our stupid brains.
Well, yeah, what you'd mentioned and what it's like, this may sound weird, but how much of your life do you spend in spirit form?
All of it.
That's what I mean. You have the ability to go out to contact these kids, and they've found that frequency to get to you to come back. And that's really exciting because you have that ability. Have you gone back in time to study other periods as to what the density levels were?
Occasionally. When I was writing The Secret History of Consciousness, which is one of my personal favorite books, several years ago, I had all these pieces and I didn't really understand it, and I started looking at and I'm fascinated with sacred geometry, and I've actually been able to figure a lot out, and I've shown that in that book and others. And as I put the pieces together, I started hopping through different time periods in relation to I was specifically at the time looking at the relationship of the Mayan calendar to what was happening to our states of consciousness and our evolution. And what I realized was that during this 26+ thousand year cycle is that we have periods of what we might call darkness, where our consciousness is at an all-time low, and during those times we have things like the Crusades, the Inquisition, other really awful things in history. And then there are times like now when it's completely the opposite. Things are set up energetically so beautifully that we're actually starting to refine the truth of our nature and the truth of ourselves. And so, like I said earlier, consciousness isn't bound by anything, any boundaries or time or space. It's faster than the speed of light in the way that it moves, and it can spread out and gather information, and it can bring that information back and feed it to the brain so that the brain can understand. So we were like that in the beginning, only far much more than we are now, and we just evolved out of it. All we're doing is circularly evolving back to what we already had.
And that sensitivity as a light energy, which these kids are bringing forward, that light energy. If
Yes.
you went back to, say, the times of Gregorian chant, the ability to hear the harmonics that we don't hear anymore. In other words, it was vibrant and alive to the people living at those periods, but as we keep dumbing ourselves down and it keeps getting denser and denser, it's like when the riots in the street with when Stravinsky premiered The Rite of Spring. I mean, that what they were hearing, now we just look as normal. And so we're missing so much of life that these kids are overstimulated by. At least that's
true. The when they sang the Gregorian chants, of which I have quite a collection, they were using harmonics of the time, and if you listen to them carefully, there's specific note structures in all of them. And also during, just a little before that time, they worked with the solfeggio scale, which is a beautiful musical scale, and initiation chambers when you go to Egypt or in any other places, Peru, even England, or any of the other places where the ancients have left historical places for us. Those were based on the energies of those times. So you can go into some of them now; they feel like nothing's happening, or you might go into some that are reinitializing because the energies are similar to the time they were built. That's why they mark the cardinal points. That's why they mark cosmic north, not magnetic north. And cosmic north was based on different planetary system. Like Cygnus used to be cosmic north, and now it's something else. I forget. I may have it backwards. But in any case, so that need, that feeling, that sense that there is something there has come with us through the millennia, and we've addressed it differently. And that's what the Secret History of Consciousness was about, and how how we are in a time of expansion again, and what a wonderful thing that is, and how it works. So I hope I didn't over-answer your question. It's a real passion for me.
Oh, that's perfect. So you're a musician, I take it.
It's not so much that, although I am a little bit. It's more about, to me, the harmonics. Everything is put together harmonically. We're all created of light, and I've described that deeply in my books. And when that light starts to organize and come together, the first thing it does is it takes the form of a four-sided pyramid. That's the first formed expression of consciousness, individual consciousness. Those came together more because there's a law in physics that everything will take its natural order. So those light fields started to organize with others and became octahedrons. And those octahedrons are like little balls with flat sides, and they organize to make everything. Everything in creation is based on that same type of harmonic structure, and all organized based on oppositions of polarity. So when you get those things happening, there at the same time there's empty spaces between, and that's where our prayers go and our anything that we put out.
We're going to have to interrupt you, Meg, and we're going to have to come back for the second hour and hear more from Meg Blackburn. This has been fascinating. We're going to talk more about the children of now and Meg's work in consciousness when we return for the second half of Lost Knowledge on Revolution Radio. Be right back. We'll take a 3-minute break. Well, welcome back this afternoon. We have Meg Blackburn as our guest on Lost Knowledge. And Meg has written a series of books that talk about the children of now, starting with the children of now, then Conversations with the Children of Now, then the Children of Now Evolution, which is just coming out in November. And the Conversation of Children of Now book the foreword was written by Lee Carroll, who, as some of us who have been sort of on the edges of the energy phenomenon and what's happening with kids, remember him from his talks about indigo children. And in the foreword, he says that it seems possible that we could actually be evolving as a human race. Meg, it sounds like that's exactly what is happening, that this race is evolving right before our eyes. I mean, you wrote these series of books in the 2008 timeframe, and here we are 2 years into the shift, and what we're seeing is amazing. Is that right?
Unbelievable, yeah. And I wanted to just kind of say the reason I kind of went off there for a few minutes was explaining the construct, because that's how the kids are communicating so easily. Is they understand that and they're able to work with it. So just wanted to throw that out there. But yes, what we're witnessing is a fast forward evolution of human consciousness. It's not just our bodies or our minds; it's our entirety. And as we become higher and higher frequencies due to the nature of our existence in this now, we are also more available to everything that creation has remembered and filed and what's happening past, present, and future. So the fact that it's happening so fast and it's escalating is just fascinating to me and to others who are watching and participating in this phenomenon, how human nature can evolve so quickly when millions of years ago, what everybody says anyway, there were nothing but cave people who could barely communicate at all, and they were not even intelligent, according to most archaeologists. And what we're finding out is completely the opposite, that they had high technology, and we just don't know who they were, where they came from, but there are periods of time where human evolution has speeded up, and then it'll slow down, and it'll speed up, but not like this. This is different. This is conscious awareness in addition to physical evolution.
Yeah, because they did not describe this as this is the great shift. I mean, this is the end of a huge the fifth cycle of humanity. So it's not just the end of a regular,
Correct.
Right. So when we experienced this great shift, we were supposed to enter. Is it a 2,000-year period of light?
Right. There is that school of thought going on out there, and it's basically true. But basically what's happening is that the shift that we actually talked about for 2012 started in 2009, and it doesn't even end until 2018. And at that point, there's going to be some pretty interesting events happening. So nothing is an overnight, immediate anything. It's all part of a natural process. And the difference is that our awareness is evolving, and what we're seeing it in the kids, and that's what's so important, is the awareness of human nature is evolving to a point where we are no longer going in the direction of an end game, but instead we're bringing in generations that can turn things around that we didn't know how to turn around, or that they even needed turning around, you know. And so I think it's a phenomenon that's just perfect timing, as creation would do, and perfect in every way. What is not perfect is society's ignorance of the whole thing, and that there's so much easy that we can do for these kids that would change many of their experiences, if not their lives long term.
So one of the things that I've talked about a little bit, and I just have to ask you quickly about it, is the multidimensional universe and all the other life forms, all the other energetic forms that are there. I mean, we cannot deny the fact right now that we're in the age of disclosure. It's just happening. It's too relevant to not talk about. And can you tell me, like, what's your personal opinion about what's going on? Are we now opening up to these frequencies and interacting with the beings that have always been here, and they're in different dimensions? Or, you know, what are the kids telling you about it?
The kids have, they often have, and this is not the same as it was, 40, 50 years ago. The kids talk to people that are actually in the spirit world or from other dimensions. Weston has a whole troop of I call them galactics. They're so strange looking. And many of these kids are interacting with beings from other levels of reality. And for anyone that's listening, if you're thinking, oh, yeah, right, I want to say that I'm able to see that and do that. And the truth is, it is out there. There is a lot of reality out there of all kinds. And for the most part, it's quite benevolent. And everyone is working for the greater good of everyone else. So while it sounds weird, all it is, it's about harmony and frequencies, okay? Just think of creation as one humongous musical chord, and every note makes up a layer of reality, and that's all that's about. And these kids are able to tap in wherever they want because of the way that construct works, as I was describing before we went on the break. These kids know how to do that. They can go to Atlantis. They can go to times where there were higher technologies. They can go to times or even see people who are not incarnated now, but that they've known through lifetimes.
So it's a holographic view of everything.
It's a holographic, yes, it's exactly it.
Mm-hmm. And we can all, even those of us that have aspirations to open up to this, are able to somehow connect to that same frequency, perhaps.
Absolutely. And the best advice I can give, stop trying and let it show you, because here's what happens. People try to do this with a preconception of what the experience is going to be like. And it doesn't work that way, because every experience we have is as of right now. Nothing ever happens outside of now. So if we have an experience and we try to repeat it, or we try to have an experience because we think that's how it should be, that's not true, therefore it cannot happen. Creation works only on truth. And so us comparing ourselves to each other, somebody can do this, somebody can do that, someone else can't, none of that is actually true. We are all that because we are all connected. And if we can take a bigger view of things rather than just our experience and what we think that should be like, we actually can learn more by just being open to it rather than trying to make it, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And one of the things that people, I think they fall short when they try to say that the earthlings are all connected, because what you're saying is we're all connected.
All of us. Yes.
Not just people on this planet, everything.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
We are literally all hardwired into the same mechanism, to speak dispassionately for a minute. We are not separate. It's impossible for us to be separate. And what you do affects me, and what I do affects everyone that's listening, and you, and everything else. And beings in other realities know that, and that's why some of them show up and try to help people on the planet, because we don't get that peace because we can't remember it. But yet, how many people do you talk to that say, I want to go home. I remember I'm supposed to be home, but they don't know where home is. I mean, there are so many people, particularly in our generation, who have said that to me. It's mind-blowing. How many people have that internal need to re-find that part of themselves? We're hardwired to remember our divinity so we don't forget it. And by virtue of the nature of how we're put together, sometimes we don't quite remember that because the physical nature gets in the way.
So the kids are able to more easily see beyond this veil that we hear about.
Yes.
That prevents us from remembering, right?
Absolutely.
So the veil is thinner, and they have a it's easier for them to see this, and they can explain it to the parents if the parents want to listen. If the teachers or other family members want to listen to the children, they could learn so much. Isn't that right?
Absolutely, no question.
So interesting, Michael. Are you still there?
Of course, I'm here.
What do you think?
Well, my passion of the five senses, I only recall in half of one of the senses in my mind's eye. And growing up, that was a real struggle because I knew I was totally different than everyone else. But it wasn't until I studied neurolinguistics that I learned myself. And so it's the belief is that, and I think you said it very well, Meg, is that each one of us is like we have a separate frequency.
Mm-hmm. And that frequency is actually identifiable. Like when we do long-distance healing sessions with people, you just tap into their frequency, and you can locate them undeniably. And so, yeah, each of us, because we're put together with harmonics, those harmonics together create a certain frequency that is ours and individual in all of creation.
And so a lot of my passion is helping people learn how their mind works so they can use their frequencies.
Okay.
In other words, to identify how they recall in their mind's eye so that it's like a gift is their curse, because they don't understand what they have. So if I can break it down simple enough so they can see that they are connected, they are going beyond themselves into something very special. That's the goal, is to help them use it so that they can help others.
That's great. That's really great.
It's off the patent a little bit from the thought, but with you, and knowing that and having this incredible ability to know, in other words, what you do, I can't do. So that's why I'm so fascinated with it. And you almost have an opportunity to meet these souls on an astral plane. Would you say that was true?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I've interacted with beings on many planes of reality, and they're phenomenal in what they can teach and show us. And early in my experience, when I really kind of blew open, as I might call it, there were a series of them that came right into my living room like holograms and taught me all about creation and healing and transmutation and formations of reality and sacred geometry. I mean, it was crazy. It was crazy.
So
it still sounds
stop.
crazy.
So it's not crazy. But so did they say they were from our future? Were they Pleiadians? I mean, how did they describe themselves?
The truth is, I didn't ask.
Didn't even ask?
Because I was opening so fast, there was nobody I could find to talk to get a reality check. And every morning I did this movement stuff that I started doing just to help keep my energy moving because I felt like I was going to explode. And every morning I would say, somebody show me somebody. And I was so impassioned and so humble from everything that had happened. One day, all of a sudden, there's this beautiful, beautiful being standing in my living room. Well, of course, I jumped and he disappeared. And I was like, wait, I've been asking and I blew it. And I really remember saying that out loud.
Like, wait, I really can do this. Yeah, right.
And so I quickly centered myself, got my balance back, and there he was. And I did not realize until 3 years later, when I was telling this story to a group of people, that he hadn't gone anywhere I had. Because outside of here, there is no time or space. There are no boundaries. It's only our perception that keeps us local. And when our thinking mind starts firing, like, what's going on? Who is this? All the things it does in a split second, it makes a field of energy that actually interferes with those higher awarenesses so that we can't get to them. And when I shut it back down very quickly and he was there, he hadn't left. He was standing exactly the way I left him. And over the years, I learned that if I'd say, I'm really tired, I need to go to sleep now, or I need some time to process this, whenever I would be ready again, they would literally pick up mid-sentence as if we never stopped.
Like the Convoluted Universe, or some of the other books where people describe that. But how do we shut that down? How do you shut that part of your mind down so you can access that?
My point of view is stop defending yourself. All of that monkey brain stuff is based on the fact that we've been taught we aren't perfect, so we're always trying to have the right answer, to feel like we're safe, to know what to expect. We're always leaning outside of now, looking for what could happen so that we can avoid it, and that has caused us to not be present in ourselves. We've got to be able to be now and not worry about everything else. Now, that doesn't mean don't set goals. It doesn't mean don't plan for your future. What it means is put that plan out there and then follow the signs to get there, because you've already created it. It's already done. Now we know that there will be a moment in time where we and that creation will intersect. It's backwards from the way most people teach it. So when we can let go of all of that and we stop trying to prove that we're okay or that people should love us or whatever we're doing, when we stop doing that and we just relax into ourselves and can really be present and have nothing to defend, that's when we are completely available for whatever may happen. And for everybody, that might look a little different. For some, it'll look very similar. It just depends on, who we are and how our frequencies are arranged, how quickly and easily we get there.
Who goes with you?
What do you mean, who goes with me?
Well, you're talking like someone that lives in love rather than fear. So what is it you rely on to guide you?
That's a good question. I guess what I would have to answer to that after all of the experience that I've had is that I know what feels okay and I know what doesn't feel okay, and that's how I trust it. You get to a point where you work from certain frequencies and you don't generally run into any problems from that point forward. But when you're first starting out, sometimes there are energies that can be confusing, information that may be sort of right but doesn't quite gel. You learn how to tell what feels like truth and what doesn't. I teach my students to use their whole body like an antenna, because our body will react before our mind can. That's a scientific fact. And so if we pay attention to our bodies, if our body tenses or we hold our breath or we tense up in different ways, some people do it in certain parts of their bodies, other people do it full body, there's an untruth there. We're trying to protect something. Okay, what is that? And when we can develop awareness where we're stalling ourselves by doing that, that way we become freer and freer of the habitual reactivity that we've learned based on what we were taught. Instead, we can learn how to be in our true nature and react intentionally from now rather than what might have been or would have been.
So to me, it sounds like we're trying to rework everything, and restructure everything. What we thought we knew was wrong. The history is wrong. Our education system's wrong. Our healthcare system is wrong. Even our politics is not serving us at the moment. This whole planet feels like it's, changing every single piece of it. Is that how you're seeing it?
As it has always done. And I do want to say, I'm not saying any of this is wrong. I did say it's a process, and we're going through a process of remembering a lot of these things. It doesn't mean that it's wrong, but we outgrow things. We went from black and white to color TV at one point. I actually remember that. We went from radio to TV before that. Now there's a new smart gadget out every 5 minutes, and things are escalating. Well, that doesn't mean something's wrong. It just means we need to sit back and say, whoa, okay. And that's what I mean. Our psychology hasn't kept up yet. And what we need to do is look particularly at what we're doing with these kids and what they need from us so that they can create a different world for all of our...
So do you see it kind of like a matrix where we're kind of jumping in and doing some work here, assignments, I guess, or whatever you want to call it, here on this planet, and then we're kind of like in and out of what you call this space-time continuum. Like when we're here, we're kind of in a linear, dense environment, and then we're off in a different. We're operating from multi-dimensions. Can you explain what that looks like?
Yeah, I think I can put that together for you. That's a little dichotomous. We actually exist at every level of reality all of the time. There are aspects of us that are a part of our entire harmonization that live in other realities. And I actually showed that in the Children of Now Evolution that's coming out November 1st, to show how come there's such a wide autism spectrum. And each one of our aspects lives in a different timeline. So a really good example of that would be, I know everybody that's listening has experienced what we call a deja vu. In other words, wow, this is really familiar. And yet we've never been there, so we think. And all that's happening is momentarily our consciousness at some point got that moment and the current moment kind of crosswired. In other words, a future aspect is contributing to now, or a past aspect is contributing to now, and it can be very confusing. I mean, I've had experiences where I had a whole conversation with someone, one in particular. My son and daughter-in-law were expecting their second child, and we were painting a house, and we stopped to rest. And I started talking to my daughter-in-law at the time about what the doctor said and how the boy is a baby and how great that is since the first one was a girl. And I talked about the heart rate and all of this stuff. And she's getting paler by the minute. I said, "What's the matter?" She said, "I haven't been to the doctor yet." Mm-hmm. I'm like, oops.
So what happens when we leave the body, when we actually experience death? Because the kids talk a lot about that in the book. And their view of death is so different because it's one of the things that propels us into fear a lot because, oh my gosh, we're going to, if we have a war, we're all going to die, or if the earth shifts on its axis and, we have this apocalyptic event and, we have a lot of fear we can generate about death, right? But what is that whole thing? What is the...
Well, the truth is it's not death. It's just like changing clothes. We leave this body and these experiences behind, and we go back to the other side. And during that time, there are processes that we go through where we learn things or process things or heal ourselves from our experiences in that lifetime. And ultimately, we become light again and have the opportunity, if we choose to reincarnate, to have another life. So dying is nothing more than the physical body doing what it does because of the nature of it. And it's just kind of like a suit we wore for a time that we no longer need. And the problem with the kids, though, is they don't understand that when somebody does die, they are gone from here. And I think that there's a lot of confusion in their psyches about that with the video games and the a lot of the movie special effects. The heroes never die. They get beat all the heck, and then they get right back up and keep fighting. Well, real life isn't like that, But death is inevitable. We're headed there from the moment we're born. And in South America, they have this really freaky custom that's very, once I understood it, it grew on me, where they have skulls. That's why they find like crystal skulls down there and stuff. And in Mexico, they have, in many places in South America, they have the Day of the Dead, and they go sit on the graves, and they have picnics and eat with the ancestors, and they believe that for one day a year, that their ancestors can come back, and so they honor them by showing up and having a party for them. And the skull being used as a reminder isn't about death, but instead it's about a reminder to the angel of death can come any time. If she were to come now, are you ready? In other words, how are you living? And I think that's a phenomenal point of view. It's not about dying. It's if we chose to live it all.
Mm-hmm. And so that you feel like, because you've talked to so many of these kids, you feel like they have a greater understanding of what the nature of this experience is. This, what we call, the experience of being human.
Many of them do, yeah, and a lot of them are not comfortable in their human bodies. When they're first born, you can see them trying to sit up out of their infant bodies with all their might. They just don't like being contained.
It's like, oh my God, what happened? You guys, this is crazy.
Yeah,
their eyes
seriously.
are so big, and they're looking around going, oh, wow, I didn't think it looked like this.
It's like being put in a can and somebody closes the lid, and there they are in there, and it takes them a little while to get used to it. It's been fun. I've been so fortunate to be present at I don't even know how many births, and watching the babies adjust as they come into the world, and they feel their bodies, and they experience people around them. You can tell a lot by their movements and their expressions and just their whole little experience, which is huge.
I mean, what's amazing is that we are the human race, and so we don't seem to be putting enough emphasis on our children. And I know you write so much information in these books, and I wish I can't say enough about. I don't even know which one to tell people to read, but certainly the new book, The Children of Now Evolution. But I think I'd almost recommend to start with the first one and read them in sequence, because it will help you understand much of what's happening right now is a shift in the way everybody's going to think. Your doctor, God bless them, they've gone to medical school and they're trying to do everything right, but they're learning too, right? Can you say that?
Always.
Yeah. Teachers are all learning right now too. We're all learning as we go, and people like Meg can help us, but we have to understand that we're all learning together and nobody has the answers. And some of these kids, I think, have contact with a source of information that will prepare us, to help understand where we're going, not just why they're here, but where we're going too. So everybody needs to focus on the kids. Give them an opportunity. Stop medicating them. Stop dumbing them down. Stop telling them that they're imperfect. And that one thing I wanted to ask you, I heard somewhere that you can measure light frequency. That you said that a few minutes ago that these kids are coming in and some of them have an aura that's of white light. Mm-hmm. What tool or technique do you have to be an intuitive to do that?
It takes very specialized scientific instruments, and physicists. I believe it's in Sweden. It's Sweden or Switzerland. I get those two mixed up all the time. Have actually been able to measure the light field of a human being for a number of years. Lynn McTaggart talks about that a whole lot in her first book, Something to Field or something like that. Mm-hmm. She cited the actual lab where they are doing that, and of course that's progressed. And they're also discovering that DNA does some really weird stuff, and when they separate it out to do DNA comparisons, there's all this what they call junk DNA down at the bottom of the wax. Excuse me, that isn't the same as the patterns that they get from what rose in the wax. And so there's a lot of question about what's really going on, because DNA they're starting to realize it has some pretty strange and freaky abilities. And, it's coded. It knows what to do and everything. And if you put a piece of DNA in one place in town and you put it across town or even across the planet and you stimulate one end, the other one's going to react identically, because DNA is all our encoding. It's what instructs our body. It's why we express the way we do, and it's constantly learning. So there's a lot of scientific advancement that's finally proving what so many of us have been saying for years. And Lynn McTaggart's work's really good on the science part, as far as who is doing what. She's got some really excellent citations in there. I cited quite a few in the new book on different subjects, GMOs and vaccines and autism and Asperger's and some other things.
Yeah, we talked to PMH Atwater last week a little bit too, and she also cited your work. So I think we have a group of, I guess, maybe highly evolved teachers here to help us pave the way for these kids.
PMH and I have a mutual admiration society. We love each other, but our opinions are vastly different. But we still love each other.
Well, and the thing is, though, we all have to come out and create a new understanding, right? Yeah. Based on some new input and based on what we're hearing from these kids. How many kids do you think you could say that you've actually interviewed?
Oh my gosh, probably a couple thousand by now.
Wow.
Or more. I mean, that's a lot of years and a lot of sessions and families and not to mention the ones that I've talked to out in public when I'm appearing places. I don't even know anymore. But there are a lot of them, and they're amazing, and they deserve to have the very best that we have to offer. And one thing I wanted to address that I made a mental note a minute ago while you were talking, and we were talking about things that need to be changed. I wanted to make it really clear that it's not the teacher's fault how the classrooms are or what the way things are set up or any of that. To a degree, they decorate their rooms or whatever. But when I first put the Children of Now out, I had a lot of teachers approach me and tell me it wasn't them. They saw what was happening, and they told me about some of these kids in their classes. And it's the school system itself that is so unbending. So I just want to make that a point. There are a lot of teachers out there in the front lines doing their very best to give the kids what they need, but their hands are tied.
Yeah, I heard that the teachers have gotten curriculum now that's standardized, that is basically, for want of a better way to say it, is shoved down their throats. And
that's true.
And and this isn't the subject of today's interview, but we have talked. In fact, in a couple of weeks, we have Michael Cremo coming on, who wrote Forbidden Archaeology. But we've talked to other people. Like Samus Monaghan, she's doing work in the Bosnian area, and others from all over the globe. But everything is wrong, I mean, we have to open up our consciousness, is what you've been telling us today, is open up our consciousness to realize that what you might have thought was true probably isn't.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean it's wrong. It just means it's not now. Okay. It's not now. Maybe it was right at some point, but now we've outgrown that. We need to recognize that and do something different. Okay. I like to take a positive perception on that, because I'm not here to judge the world. What I'm here to say is, wow, I have a lot of experience in this area, and I'm seeing things repeatedly all over the world that are damaging these kids. And gee, what if we rethink these things and go about them a little differently? Maybe we could be more current with how we're taking care of them. So
they could rewrite all the textbooks instantly, because they're it's on, everything's virtual and online now. So when we want to make a change,
isn't it great? Yeah, you mentioned Bosnia. Sam Osmogovich is a good friend of mine, and I was just over there in September of last year presenting at his conference about the pyramids. But you know, wherever you go in the world, people know it's time for something to change, and it's really interesting that we're starting to turn up sacred sites in areas that have been real low frequency. You know, the Bosnians are only 20 years out of their wars, and psychologically probably not quite that far because of the damage that was done there. And you know, there's so much in this world that we all have to be thankful for every day. But the question is, what works and what doesn't? And that's the piece we've lost. Everything's going so fast, we're missing the details. And it's in those details, in this now, because nothing ever happens outside of now. That's where the answers are, and that's where the true observations are. And when we can work from this standpoint, that's when the truth starts to happen. Because what was, and what isn't yet is either imagined or speculated, but it's not reality. This is, right now. And so if we can work from that perspective, we'll start to realize what we need to change to make that difference that we're here to do and that we're talking about. And when we make that difference, that's our legacy. It's our life's work. Everything we do up to any given moment is our life's work.
So did the children, they chose you obviously to be their spokesperson, because they desperately have needed somebody to come forward and bring all this information and let everybody feel safe. I mean, everybody can feel safe if they read Meg's books and understand that their child is perfect and that their child, there's nothing wrong with saying that you have, a connection to a bigger world out there, that you maybe even go to night school with other kids, that you have, I don't know, lots of things they may tell you about their past lives, about their soul journeys, about the universe. I mean, if you read the book, you'll see some amazing stories from these kids. And the reality is, by putting it all together and making it safe, we know now that the kids are united in thought and action and deed, and that they're here to do what they say, right? I mean, you can...
Absolutely.
Yeah. And did you feel at the time that this was your... That were you surprised that they chose you, I guess?
I don't think like that. It's kind of weird. I've learned to just kind of lay back and follow what's happening rather than trying to make something. And so that thought never occurred to me. What did occur to me is this real, or am I embellishing something that I don't understand? You know, that's the way I approach things, because I learned that as soon as I try to understand something, it's no longer pure truth. I have colored it somehow. So my methodology is real different than most people. I relax and open up and listen with all of me, so that I can get whatever it is that's I'm looking for, that's coming in, or whatever the case might be. Everybody can do that.
Living in the now, you are.
Absolutely. I walk that talk. I do. I really do. And I know that a lot of what we're talking about has been really darn weird. And I used to worry about how are people going to feel about this. And you know what? I don't care, because I get it. I know that what is real, and all I can do is share my experience of that. So my philosophy is weird is wonderful.
I know. Well, I have to let Michael finish off this interview. Meg, I have been so excited to talk to you, and I didn't know why, but we have more in common than you can even imagine.
I got it. I picked that up. Thanks.
Yeah, it's crazy. And we'll talk some more. But Michael, maybe you guys you want to spend the last few minutes talking about dreams and what happens when we're not trying to block our consciousness, because one of your books was on dreams, and I imagine she's got a lot. The kids have probably told a lot about what happens when in the nighttime. So,
where do kids go at night? Or where do we go at night?
Well, basically, a lot of times we leave our bodies and we're able to travel freely because we're not maintaining that protection. A lot of times we're just working out our days and our nights because we are out of the way. And other times we go to what a lot of us call night school, and we learn things and we bring them back to our lives. But the dream world is really interesting because it carries also a lot of symbology. And once you start recognizing the symbology that's yours, it makes it really easy to interpret your dreams. And the kids have amazing dreams because they're so open already, and they're able to talk about them quite clearly and remember them in many occasions. But dreaming is kind of like very similar to when we're driving a car or doing any other thing that distracts our mind. When our mind gets quiet, that's when we can really get into these crazy, wild, and wonderful places that we've been talking about.
Well, go
ahead.
ahead. Well, I was going to say, actually, you're talking what I call a trance. It's a form of dream in a way, but we can do it in waking state too. Waking trance is where we step out and travel.
That's true. But we don't even have to go that far to pop out and get what we need and pop back in. I mean, It's instantaneous.
Yes, you're right. It does. And for people that are used to that, stepping back and forth. One question I have here, why the human race? Why or what is it about the human race that in the context of the whole cosmos is it that we focus on us, or is it there is a focus on us from the outside and all this process we're going through?
We're the ones that really have that perception, and it's really, I find it pretty hilarious that so many people think we're the only possible beings in all of creation, because there are so many planets that are capable of sustaining life, and maybe even life as we don't understand it. There are races that are silicone-based, we're carbon-based. There's all kinds of stuff out there, and it's just a question of staying curious and looking at things from a place of innocence rather than I think I know it all. How could we possibly? Because it's not in our frame of reference to realize that what could be different out there.
How about a soul?
A soul?
Yeah. Can you explain what a soul is? Or do we have
a soul? Is an essence of creation reflected to demonstrate some aspect of itself. Every one of us is that. Every one of us are not what we would call God or creation, but each one is an aspect of it. Together we make the whole. Okay?
Now, how does, in this soul aspect, as Deb would maintain, that a lot of the other races that inhabit the earth that may not be seen all the time don't necessarily have souls. Do you find that?
Well, it's not necessarily that they don't have souls. It's just maybe that they're in the wrong neighborhood. Maybe they're not somewhere that's normal and natural for them to be. Or maybe they're here there are more than one kind. Some are here in a quite benevolent way to teach us about sciences or other things. And there's other ones that maybe don't have such great intentions, but that's a whole nother subject. But I think that is here. This is a Meg thing, not a God. I know this from creation. Okay, To me, every living thing has a soul of some sort, no matter what the origin. I don't think that we all reincarnate as worms or other kinds of animals or different things. People reincarnate as people, animals reincarnate as animals, basically in their same nature. It's a harmonic relevance. Because when you look on the other side and you see people who have crossed over, a lot of times their pets are with them. They're expressing in that nature. And so, a soul is an animated aspect of reality with a personality that expresses a singular aspect of creation. How's that? I hope somebody wrote that down.
Well, this is what I love, is when you know what you know and it just comes to you. That means, in my mind, that you're really connected to something very special. And it just flows through in the moment.
Yes, and anybody can do it.
I agree totally with that. It's giving people permission to take the risk of letting it happen, keeping the ego out of the way, and just with the best of intentions. All right, so miracles. What are miracles?
Miracles are things that happen out of the ordinary and often unexpectedly. And what they are is the magic in all of reality, all of living. A miracle can be a simple encounter between two people that changes one's life and the other never even knows. Or it might be a spontaneous healing. I mean, miracles have many faces, and they're present in every moment. So you can't really define succinctly a miracle, because it may be to someone, but maybe not to me or you, or it may be to all of us. It just depends on again, that moment. I'm not sure what you're looking for.
Well, I had picked up a little. My research is a little different than Deb's, but I was looking at some YouTubes, and you were talking about miracles, so I just brought that in as one of the concepts of.
That was the one I did on touching the light, what miracles are made of, and Sandy Sedgbeer was interviewing me, and she's a sweetheart, and I was talking about how the emotions interfere with our healing, and how if we can get to something before the emotions take over, that we can actually watch miracles happen right before our eyes and things will heal. And that's because we, by our perceptions and our emotions and therefore our fears, change direction of our own lives without realizing it in every given moment. But when it comes to something happening to us physically, there's more fear there, especially if we can see it. And so what I was trying to get across in that interview, and what I think I got across in that interview, was that miracles can happen as long as we know that's possible. Then there's nothing we can't do. We can do anything as long as we know it's possible. And that's a fact, because if we have no frame of reference to work from, we don't even understand that there are possibilities available. But as soon as we have a frame of reference, which is why I so boldly put my weirdness out there, to let people know, hey, there are options, there are possibilities. As soon as we get that piece, then we start opening to new and different. But until we know it even exists, how can we possibly?
I'm enjoying your answer, which is just what I was hoping to hear, knowing that I was going to hear it. And I look at these kids you're talking about as miracles.
They are. Every kid's a miracle.
And they're a gift to us. We're part of a transition team, and our job is to help them. But the gift is to the whole consciousness in a way that it can really allow it to perhaps raise, to find a different, higher density, a better frequency, to really feel that love, the God energy, as you would say. And I really like that. Now, I want to ask you what you would like to tell the listeners and what you would like to convey with them that perhaps we haven't covered that's a passion for you.
Thank you so much. There are a couple of things. I talked about the healing work and that kind of thing. I actually teach a year-long certification course called Touching the Light, and it's based on that book, Touching the Light. And I teach people not only how to identify and locate the different parts of the etheric anatomy that we've been talking about, but how to access and change them, even if they can't see, like we've been talking about. My students are stellar by the end of the year. And that comes with a personal mentorship from me. So you can go to touchingthelight.org, touchingthelight, all one word, .org, and all the information you need except for next year's schedule's up there. And then I do trips all over the planet, and a good place to watch for what's upcoming is on my main website. It's spiritlight.com, spiritlite.com, and I'm looking at maybe Scotland and Wales for next summer. I know I've got something in the works for Hawaii, and I've got a few other ones. I usually do 2 major trips a year. We just did Peru and England, so I'll probably be rotating something else in for this coming year. But so there's always something going on, and they're really great immersion trips with real local medicine people or shaman or whatever the case, wherever we are, and they're a lot of fun. And the new book that we've been talking about, The Children of Now Evolution, comes out November 1st, but I understand it's available for pre-sale on Amazon.com, probably Barnes & Nobles too. All of your favorite bookstores can get it. All they have to do is look it up. It's The Children of Now Evolution. The first one is The Children of Now. I know that's going to get confusing along the way, but anyway, I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about so many awesome things besides just the kids, because it's all that, isn't it?
It is all that. I need to ask you this question because I feel that you know it, the answer. But I believe there's a design in you for something that could fit. It could be as simple as a four-sided pyramid just in frame, but a place that these kids could find to go to, that perhaps they could find that place where they could find the comfortableness from the world and communicate. And I think in your mind there's an image of something that kids could do, and it may be even a mental image.
I'll have to think about that.
Well, I just pass things out. And when they come through,
I actually tried to put them together in chats, and I had a hard time getting them going. Of course, that was several years ago. But I really want them to connect in positive ways, and I want them to be able to step out of what they're feeling. And that's why I did the CD. It's called Inside and Out, and it helps them learn how to recognize those things. But as far as going to a place that's still and silent, if a child is needing an escape, they can imagine that there's a pyramid, a four-sided pyramid of light in front of them, and they can actually project their attention inside of that pyramid and just like sit down in it and just be still. And they'll have some pretty cool experiences, and they'll also hear a tone. And anybody can do this. I forget which book it's in, but it's basically leaving your body in a very safe way, and the tone that you hear is your signifier in all of creation. And some other really cool stuff can happen in there, but it's very safe. You can't get lost. You're in a contained environment, just outside of your body. The pyramid of light is solid. It's totally safe. So if I have any little bit older kids, any of you guys listening, that's a really good thing to do.
And if you ever in your travels get up to the White Mountains of New Hampshire, we have a very sacred piece of land here that has very old energy with some history that goes back. So I'm just passing that on to you in your travels. And it's really, it has its own agenda and brought us 50 years ago. And the adventure has been mind-boggling. What words of wisdom from the universe, not from you, but from the, could come through your lips, but what would you like to leave with our listeners in thoughts, and also, just what comes through that's right and good?
Basically just to be, stay with what's true. Don't try to make what's true, because when we do it isn't, and it can't work. The other piece of that is that we are all perfect. And the only way we are not is by our own perception. So that if we can find our perfection and we can mirror that perfection to our children, we're going to have a completely different world, especially if we're brave enough to walk in that truth and be who we are in spite of what we think everybody else thinks about us. That doesn't matter. How we live, and if we choose to live at all, is really what matters. So be a reflection of what you know in your heart, and you won't be wrong. You can't be wrong.
And the concept of heart math and the energy of gratitude in your heart really magnifies that with your intentions.
Right. We have to be in gratitude.
Dr. Meg Blackburn, we want to thank you so much for taking this time to talk with us today. And Really appreciate it. And that concludes our show.